Or you gain, I don't know which.
Here, we're live when you're ready. Father, we thank you for our lives. This evening, help us to be broad thinking, selfless, and use the wisdom that you give us to make decisions that their son's name. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3 on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion? Mr. Hyman?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda.
Thank you. Mr. Goldfinch?
I'll second this motion, please.
Thank you. We have a properly seconded motion to approve the agenda. All in favor, if you would say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries unanimously. I did mean to mention early that Shane Hubbard, our councilman is not with us this evening. He's not feeling his best, and with an abundance of caution has decided to stay at home this evening. Please remember him in your prayers. Next on the agenda is consent agenda approval. Is there a motion, Ms. Jens?
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Shane.
There you go, Mayor.
You did not look like Shane to me. Mr. Gordon, please, I'm so
I will
sorry.
second Ms. Tips.
Thank you.
To her credit, there is a bit of a glare.
Is it coming from my head or is it coming from here?
It's hard to see your name.
Tyler just worked on the head today. so
My
maybe that-
apologies. You know, I know who you
I
are.
know.
We have the motion has been seconded by Mr. Jordan. All in favor by saying aye, please?
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. The motion carries unanimously. We are now at item 4. I'm sorry, item 5. This is public input. We do have one person who is present to offer public input, but I'll ask our clerk whether or not she has heard from anybody, either electronically or otherwise, for public input. All right, thank you so much. Ma'am, please come in. How are you? We have Ms. Beth Smith, whose address is 904 Lakeside Drive, who is here to talk about tennis. Welcome.
Yes, I've lived in Conway my whole life. My father before me and his father before him. I love this city with my whole heart. But honestly, I've been a little disappointed that they have not replaced the clay tennis courts. That's my thing. All we want to do is have you rebuild them as they were before. Even 5 would be better than none. I asked some people to get signatures, so I have them. I'll give them to you.
Thank you, ma'am. We can share. Thank you.
And a question, of course, is why clay? Because that seems to be an issue. So I looked it up on scoopify.org. Never heard of that, but I found it. And it said, with clay courts, the players enjoy longer rallies and overall improved control of game. To be a successful tennis player on clay courts, you are definitely going to need more technique as well as more effective strategy built around tolerance and intelligence. This is why we are seeing rampant clay courts installed across the top training centers across the globe, unlike before now. Even more than the recreational side of playing tennis on clay courts, there is yet the amazing health benefits, which are more attractive. Primarily granular clay tennis courts are famous across the world for their supplementary capacity to act as shock absorbers. This way, you are better enhanced to slide into your return. Now, this has the immense advantage of ensuring that your joints are suitably protected. The impact of playing on your joints when playing on clay courts is not as intense or damaging as when you play on other surfaces, especially cement courts. The reality is that for tennis court installation, that allows you to slide. Just like the clay courts, you are 85% less likely to sustain injuries when measured against the hard cement courts. So we see that tennis players on a clay court tend to have longer and safer careers, savoring the game without pain. Comparatively, clay court surfaces stay 20% cooler even than hard courts. And people my age, which is really young, can play all the time and not get injuries. And I even had somebody say to me when I was here the other day that why didn't I play it at down at the courts at the center there? And I said, well, they're hard courts. She said, well, her husband plays there. I said, it's very hard on your knees. And she actually said, I wondered why he'd been complaining about pain in his knees. I said, well, there you go. That's that. So on to the next part. People from 3 to 93 can play on clay courts. Older people can play on clay courts. Tennis is a year-round sport, not just one season of the year, which makes it a real positive thing. Teams are important because they bring players and spectators to Conway. They shop and eat in our restaurants. Many of our teams have won states in Hilton Head. That brings recognition to Conway. They always say, oh, I know you. We play teams from Greenville, Spartanburg, Charleston, and we still win. That's a real positive for us. Clubs organize many teams, under 40, under 55, under 65, under 70, under 75. A person can play on any level, 3-0, 3-5, 4-0, 4-5. There are men's teams, women's teams, combo teams, and mixed teams, meaning men and women. Players from the city and outside the city played. Outside the city, people had to pay more, so even more reason for having them. So there's an article that says, to live longer, forget the treadmill and play tennis. So any questions from anybody, specific things? It's a great sport. It's the only one that here we played year round and all these different age groups and different people. And we had a pro that did a great job with teaching children. The only problem with that was he was told to tell the people that paid for lessons to write a check to the city of Conway instead of to the tennis center. So I think sometimes there was some bad information shared with that. So, the questions? Maybe I didn't give you enough information.
Ms. Smith, we appreciate you being here.
Mhm.
I didn't say so when you began, but you just used up your time.
Okay.
And public input isn't really interactive,
Mhm.
but I believe that you've been heard and we
Okay.
appreciate your coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Item 6 is special presentations.
Mayor, we want to make sure there's no else in the hall that would like to speak or do
Absolutely. Let's be certain of that.
anything else.
We'll entertain a motion to close public input. Mr. White? Thank you, sir. Mr. Hyman?
I'll second Mr. White's motion.
Thank you. We have a properly seconded motion to close public input at this time. All in favor indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. The motion carries unanimously. Item 6, special presentation, A, accommodations tax annual report. Mr. Mungo. How do you do? Good, welcome. Happy to see you.
Mayor and City Council, I want to thank you for allowing us to serve on the ATAX committee each year. We had to use a different approach this year. We had to do by conference call, which is the same thing we did last year. I do want to thank Alice. I know she's in the hallway. She does a lot to help us before, during, and after. She gets advertisements in place for us. She receives the application. She gets the spreadsheet ready. And then she said at the conference call this year. So real big thanks to Alice for what she does for us. We started the process by advertising the applications. The dollar amount that we got this year was $59,035. The applications from agencies that we heard from each year. So we really didn't have to do any interviews, which is really good for us. From that, we do make recommendations for you for what best fit for the city of Conway this year. That being said, funds available for tourist related expenditures for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021 is $26,160.65. The committee recommends a disbursement of $26,160 to 4 separate agencies. That'll leave a whopping 65-cent carryover for next year. So everyone else and have a little something to work with. We got our 65 cents. With the recommendation that we do with that, with the recommendation, June 30th, 2021, Chamber of Commerce, $8,160. Their biggest thing is Riverfest. Conway Alive, $8,500. They have 15 or so events throughout the year, including a lot of fall events that are coming up now in Christmas 2021. The Walk-A-Mall Market Cooperative, Conway Farmers Market, it comes around every Saturday, which they do advertising for. And Theater of the Republic, $8,500 for them for advertising for musical productions, comedies, Coastal Youth Theater, and in special programs throughout the year. We feel all these requests fall within the guidelines that is set up by ATAX, and we make this recommendation to you on that. Hopefully everybody will get back to the post-pandemic and we'll start bringing a lot of visitors back in the Conway area. With that, I'll leave it up to you for any questions or anything.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mungo. Are there questions or comments? Mr. Corbett?
Mayor, I will move that we approve the levies from
I'll second Mr. Goldfinch's motion.
We have a properly seconded motion to approve the recommendations of the committee. Any other comments? There being none, all in favor, with, if you would please say aye. Aye. And anyone opposed, say nay. There being none, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much for your work
Appreciate it.
on our behalf. We appreciate it. I've changed to an aye and nay, thinking that somebody's might be online, but I don't think that Shane is participating. All right, thank you so much. Item B is a request to rezone approximately 17 and 31/100 acres of property located at Boundary and Main Street near Mill Pond Road, PIN 33800000022 from City of Conway Highway Commercial to medium density residential. Ms. Harden.
Hello, Your Honor. Thank you very much for listening to us today. This is a request to rezone 17.31 acres as stated. The map is shown on the screens and is in your handout. The area that is proposed for annexation is the blue outline on the screen. And also the annexation paperwork is located with that as well. The applicant is here to answer any questions, but I want to go over really quickly that there has been a lot of communication about this property with the Planning Commission and with the applicant and with the staff. When I first started, this property was in the process of being rezoned, and it was my first introduction to the process of rezoning, and I swallowed hard, and I'm like, do you know there's a floodway? There's a floodway on the property. But what I didn't know at that time was that the applicant did not intend to develop the entire property. The applicant intended to develop the high ground near Boundary Street, and that there's a considerable amount of wetlands that are set aside on the rest of the property. As we noted in some of the meetings, the wetland area flooded considerably during the last 2 major storms. But as I said, we talked about that during the Planning Commission. The applicant said that they really just need the frontage along Boundary Street. They have an interest in building 10 homes there with the required stormwater controls, and that the rest of the property would be set aside and labeled as not developable, according to how our code reads in Chapter 10. We presented this idea to the applicant. The applicant was receptive to that because as it looks, it's just really wet, and it would be a real nightmare to have to develop either way. So we came to a compromise of recommending approval for the zoning for the property itself, and that the applicant, when he comes to a subdivision, would set aside the remainder of the property away from the first part of the subdivision as a non-buildable area due to the land conditions. That way, the Crabtree Crabtree Canal easement is maintained as is. The floodway that is there on the property is left alone as is and left to manage as it's supposed to. The additional stormwater that the 10 houses would require is very minimal and has been given a basic outline. We did not ask for a full civil because that takes a lot of time, and we wanted the applicant to be able to move forward with a general understanding, and we would tweak it from there if needed as the technical drawings would allow. But we have reached what we think as staff thinks is a very good compromise to allow a few extra homes to be built in this area, which of course we need a few extra homes in the county and the city, and to set aside our precious resources. That's it.
Thank you so
The
much.
applicant is here if you'd like to talk to him.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Mr. Goldfinch.
Thank you, Mayor. So when we set aside, what you said makes sense, but when we set aside, say the wetlands to sort of, declare that as unbuildable, does that mean like they're agreeing not to build on it, or that the next guy can come in and make that buildable? I mean, I like your compromise. Thank you for working with us.
Sure. The intent is that it will not be buildable in the future, and that the non-buildable statements goes along with the deed and the title after the subdivision is completed. That's my understanding. I'd like the applicant to tell you on his own.
So the piece that you've got part of it, okay. So we're only talking a few acres, and then how much is the actual, the canal that goes through? How big is the easement? Yes.
Yeah, and I've got something to add if I can real quick. Yeah. My name's Sean Becker, and I'm the applicant for this project. Our real goal here is to actually donate the remaining 14 acres to the city of Conway. Right now, I know to the southeast corner, city of Conway owns 2.64 acres right there. This would adjoin that. And the benefit to the city of Conway here is that this property encompasses both sides of the Crabtree Creek bank. We also have access on Mill Pond Road and 701 South, which would really create a situation where it's going to be very easy to maintain that part of the canal. And potentially, if the city deemed appropriate to even at some point increase the capacity of that for stormwater carrying. So we have zero intentions to develop that. And that's why we certainly agreed to that deed restriction, which, that wasn't hard for us to agree to because that's our full intent. Then we could work out the process of how we transfer that to the city of Conway. I did notice upstream, the city of Conway has got some properties along that. So I would imagine that would be desirable for the city of Conway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is, please.
That with the property, we are interested in taking the property, obviously. And at the time we take the property, then we, as the city, can rezone that property to conservation preservation, which would match the future land use plan, which means that we don't have to go forward with an edit on the future land use plan.
Mr. Hyman.
Mayor, I would, at the appropriate time, make a motion to approve the request.
This is just for
Oh, okay,
discussion.
okay.
Yes. Well,
Mayor,
Mr. Wright.
Is there any possibility of those houses being flooded at any point? When you build them down?
I'm not leaving. What we're going to do on that property right now, that it's not in the current flood zone map, but we know that the new map's coming up real soon. So what we've agreed to do is build the finished floor elevation of these homes 3 feet above the new flood ordinance, or excuse me, the new FEMA map that's going to be enacted. Right now, City of Conway only requires 1 foot of freeboard. We're going to go to 3 feet, which matches Horry County's new ordinance, which is the highest freeboard in our area. In the event that there is a storm that does flood 701, these homeowners have the ability to go down, take Medland Parkway and Culture Road back to 501. So they certainly wouldn't be, landlocked at all or waterlocked.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
And in addition, that is something that the applicant offered outside of the rezoning. We can't require it. We can't make a contract rezoning for that. But as we explained to the applicant, the new flood zone, the new flood insurance rates start October 1st. And it's going to be to his benefit for his future owners to do as much as he can to prevent flooding in this area. And that area was the least flooded of the whole property during the last two storms. So he does have the highest point on there for the housing.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Well, this sounds like a win-win. Thank you so much for being here with us. And we will. All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. We'll move forward then to the next item, which is item C, a request to annex approximately 3.5 acres of property located at 1003 Krill Street, PIN 36905020006, and request to rezone from Horry County Commercial General Residential to City of Conway Professional Zoning. Ms. Harden.
Oh, I'm going the wrong direction, sorry. Yes, ma'am. This is a proposal. Mr. Skinner is not in the hallway at this time. So I'll provide you with the information that we talked about during the during the planning commission meeting. The property is located across the street from an existing daycare that Mr. Skinner's family runs on Krill Street. They need more space, which is great. I mean, we like to see that businesses want to grow. The property available across the street is the property that we're talking about annexing and zoning to P Professional, which is already on Creel Street, which covers the Social Security building and some of the church properties on this side of the road. In addition, under the professional district, we gave you a list of all the items that are allowed in the professional district that are currently allowed in those other zones that are other properties that are zone T. And I blew out the conditional items on the child daycare center so that you would know upfront what are the conditions for that to come forward. And primarily it is that the state has licensed the daycare center and there are a few extra buffer requirements in that area. So those are all things that I presented those to Mr. Skinner and he said absolutely they could meet those. We did have a couple of phone calls for information. And so far, everyone has been okay with the idea of the daycare center there. The neighbors that own the property behind it have been the ones that have called.
So are there comments or questions from anyone? All right, thank you so much, Ms. Harden.
You're welcome.
Continuing to move forward. Next item is item 7. First reading of ordinance ZA 2021-1004, an ordinance to annex approximately 2 3/700 acres of property located at and behind 2717 Bonnie Lane, PIN 32408030056, 0061, and 0062, and request to rezone from Horry County Residential to City of Conway Low Medium Density Residential.
Yes,
Ms.
ma'am.
Harden.
This is a request to annex that is required based on getting connected to the water and sewer department. And Mr. Turner is here as one of the applicants. I will tell you that this is my second month here. Yay, I'm really excited. But I'm also really excited about annexations. And I often say, yes, let's, even if it's going to be a challenge. But when I said, yes, let's to this one to begin with, once I got into the study and once the staff got into the studying of the neighborhood, my staff and I all came up with questions we really couldn't quite answer. And so I asked for an opportunity to evaluate the community. Mr. Turner needs to go forward though. He's got a home that he wants to construct and wants to connect to water and sewer. So it's unfair to make him wait for the several months that it would take for me and the staff to go through a real neighborhood evaluation for annexation like I've done in the past. So we recommend instead of annexation, which is what I would typically say, I want you to understand, I'm always in favor of annexation. But this one seems to be a little bit more responsible if we wait to see if the whole neighborhood is able to be connected to our garbage truck routes. We don't have a garbage truck route out there. And the police districts, if we can add that in there. And what we can do with the zoning in that area. We really don't have a good fit yet for that. So based on those points, we as staff recommend denial of this, but Mr. Turner will have a restricted covenant signed so that if in the future we come through and decide that it's time for us to help this neighborhood build forward, then Mr. Turner would be part of that movement. And Mr. Turner's here to answer any questions.
And at that time, Mr. Turner, we welcome you into the City of Conway.
Thank
Do
you.
you want to make comments?
No, we, basically, this home is, we're currently renting a property that was just sold. And the owners have asked us to move out as quickly as possible. So we went and purchased a new double wide. We have 5 kids. So we're expecting delivery within the next week or 2 of this home. So it's very, important that we get city water and sewer.
Absolutely.
And we thought it was worthwhile to look at the whole neighborhood in general, but to allow him to keep forward.
Absolutely. I hope you think this is a compliment. I would have never thought that you're the father of 5 children.
Thank
You
you.
look so young.
They're all girls.
Bless your heart.
They're 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Let's have a moment of prayer.
You're building a man cave, right?
You need a shed,
Yes, you do.
a pout house.
Your best wishes to you.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, Mr. Goldfinch, please.
Mayor, I move we deny annexation of this request at this time.
Mr. Hyman,
As much as I would like to welcome you to Conway, I would second Mr. Goldfinch's motion.
thank you. We have a properly seconded motion under these circumstances to deny the request for annexation at this time. Are there any other comments? There being none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
All right.
Any nays? There are no nays. The motion carries unanimously. Best wishes to you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to the
Absolutely.
restricted covenant world.
We're now ready for the city administrator's report. And I gotta say again, 5 girls. Did he say 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5?
I got one and check out the beard and everything
Wait.
was, yeah, was not falling out,
This is
turning
what-
gray.
this is what you did to you. Wait till she's a teenager.
Well, good afternoon.
Mr. Emery,
Hi.
thank you, sir.
I want to give you a quick update on the RIDE 3 funded perimeter road project. We've learned from SCDOT that it has now progressed to the right-of-way acquisition phase. It's ahead of schedule. It's very promising, and it means that once we've acquired that right-of-way, the next phase will be construction. So we're hopeful that we're able to get that under construction early, as well as the acquisition has gone. The Community Appearance Board has received plans for improving the parking area behind the library administration building at 5th and Laurel, and we'll review that at their next meeting. I know that was a topic that this council had discussed, and I wanted to make sure you were aware that that's come forward. The engineers for the Smith Jones Pool Project have visited the site to do initial information gathering. They're meeting with staff tomorrow morning to get the major work underway. The engineering portion of the project should take several weeks, after which we can move to the construction phase, and we're still on track for an opening at the beginning of next season. Some of the windows have arrived for the corner of the new home of the Building and Planning Department. This will allow for the alley side windows to be installed, hopefully beginning this week. And I said hopefully because I wrote that, but the first window is in this afternoon, so it's already underway. And once the windows are in, then they can begin working on the siding for the alley side. Now, our windows were not supposed to come in until December. We only got the alley side in, but that is at least progress. So hopefully we'll be able to get those in, and the other ones will come in when we're ready. The drywall work and ceiling work is underway inside right now with our contractors. Once that's completed, we can begin painting and flooring. Robert Cooper is hopeful that we will be in before Christmas, and I think we're definitely making progress. Some of the finishes are starting to come together in there, and it really is, it's going to be a beautiful building when it's done. We do need to reschedule the Whittemore community meeting. We'll work on that later this week, probably looking at the beginning of October. And at the same time, we're going to need to start looking at asbestos remediation for that building. No matter what we decide to do with the building, the asbestos must come out. So we're going to start looking at that as well. On another front, we have 2 sets of RFPs that came in last week. One is for the update to our downtown and riverfront master plan. The other is for a trails master plan. Both will be reviewed by staff this week and scored based on the scoring, the suggested firms choices we brought to city council at the next meeting for consideration. We're very excited about that one as well. This Friday, we will replant the trees on Laurel Street, including a small celebration for Arbor Day for the tree across the street from the planning and building department. There's one of the trees there that it's the same tree as all the other trees, but it's a good spot for the celebration. So we'll do it there. And that will be at 10:30 in the morning on Arbor Day, which again is we're celebrating Friday on Laurel Street. As you know, the city was awarded its largest ever grant earlier in the year to upgrade our sewer system, allowing for growth and to alleviate some of the current flooding issues. We're currently working with Southeastern Land Company to obtain the needed easements for this project, which then will allow us to move forward with construction. Of the 23 required easements, we've acquired 17, and we hope to have the remaining 6 within the next few weeks. That's really good progress as well. And the last part of my report, before I yield to some department heads, we are very near to October, and which means it's Halloween season in Conway. Next week, we will begin decorating. So some of the things we've done in the past, we're going to expand upon, and we have some new tricks up our sleeve this year as well. The Fall Festival is October 2nd, and Conway will be very spooky by then. So just expect it to be a little bit bigger and better than last year, even that. First, I wanted to give some time to John Rogers to talk about a recent meeting he's had with the USTA, which is the U.S. Tennis Association, which can help maybe answer some of the questions that were asked earlier in the meeting. Then I'm going to bring in Chief Dale Long to talk about the open carry ruling, the new law, and then finally with Fire Chief Lee Hendrick and his department head report. John, you want to go first?
Rogers.
Good
Welcome.
afternoon. Just a brief update on where we are with tennis. We met with representatives from the South Carolina Division of the U.S. Tennis Association about a month ago. And one of those was their executive director, Cheryl McAllister. Pretty sure it's McAllister. And we kind of talked about the different things. They agreed with us on the fact that the old site of the tennis center is not really feasible to be a tennis center, because if we had rebuilt there, it would have been destroyed again in the flood we had last winter. So we discussed some different ideas, and what really got their ears perked up was the possibility of coordinating with other groups that have tennis courts in the city. There are a couple schools that have them, and possibly the city looking at leasing those. Basically, those are tennis courts that are there now or in the city, and they're not open to the public. So through some kind of lease through us, they could become open to the public. And if we did even one of those, they said that we would have more courts per capita than a community our size needs. It would be great for the community, and we would have plenty of opportunities. If, like I said, if we got even one more area to play tennis, we would have 3 separate places in Conway to play tennis. And there's been a lot of discussion on clay courts versus hard surface courts. And they didn't say this outright, but their general attitude is a tennis court is a tennis court from their perspective, because what they look at is bringing people to the sport of tennis. And that's primarily, they were fairly open that that's primarily done by engaging young people into the sport. And the one thing where they said tennis has a reputation as being an expensive sport. So a lot of parents, if their kid mentions tennis, they say that's expensive, you're not playing tennis. And one of the things they would like if to partner with us in the future is to possibly grant money for providing the equipment to kids who are interested in playing tennis, the rackets, the balls, any clothes they may need, to bring the cost down and make tennis more attractive to everybody in the city of Conway. So that was basically where we left it. They were very hopeful about us reaching out to others who have tennis courts to make them public spaces. So that was the main takeaway from the meeting.
May I ask a question? So it sounds like in the sense that they're saying they want us to expand opportunity for tennis, but they don't see any particular value in the more expensive clay courts. I mean, clearly there's some advantages, but given the cost associated with it, they'd prefer that we certainly work on our expansion and are more concerned about that than the development of new clay courts.
Right. They were, they had a lot of interest in our interest in making the most of public dollars. They were well aware they can't go to every city and say, let's spend millions on tennis. That's not going to get them in the door. So they were understanding of our ability to spend money in the wisest way possible.
Thank you so much. Ms. Jones?
John, talk to me a little bit about the problem that we have that we don't have 5 to 8 in one place, because apparently to have teams come here and play meets and this sort of thing, that they don't need to be running all over town They need to be in a single location. I certainly hope we won't ever fill up Collins Park with tennis courts, but what are your thoughts on that and what were theirs?
Their position is that if you're looking at tournaments, you need to have 8. Because generally in most sporting events, you go 64, 32, 16, 8, 4, 2. So that in their position, if you're interested in sports tourism tournaments, 8 is where you want to be. Some of those opportunities to lease courts may bring us 8 in one place that we just have to, the places we're thinking of, I don't want to out them in a public meeting before
I
we're too far
understand.
down the road with them, but
But we would have 8 in one place if we could lease an appropriate
Possibly.
facility.
and they said it's basically up to us. Do we want to prioritize tournaments and sports tourism? That's just something we have to.
Well,
The
to
council
me,
would have to
it would be disheartening if I were a tennis player and I were working hard my whole life and I didn't have a place to go with tournament play.
That's the way it is for soccer and other sports right now. You have to go other places.
But those
to
are
play.
team sports. Tennis is a much more
Absolutely.
individual sport.
Yep.
And I mean, we're more likely to groom a tennis player solo than a soccer team solo, I would think.
Mr.
John,
Harmon?
one of the, and I did talk with somebody at one of those places, I think that you're talking about, and they seem very interested in partnering for tournaments. I don't know if they'd be interested in partnering just on an everyday basis to have it as, open for everybody. I think that would be difficult, whether if it was high school or coastal or wherever. But I do think it's definitely doable to, partner for these tournaments. I think that could be very beneficial.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Groveman?
Ms. Sims, maybe you can shed some light on this 3 days, and maybe you may have been on staff or even on council, but we end up with 8 clay courts down there by the river. Anybody know the backstory on that?
I know a little bit. It started with 4 and they built an additional 3 with grant money. I don't know the legacy beyond that, just that's what I found in the records. That there were 4 built, I think initially with grant money. I think soil, water, land conservation funds provided the land and maybe the first 4. 3 courts were added. So there was only 7 when the flood took them out. We've never had 8 together. But it was all grant funded, I do believe.
And the original ones were built in 1991. So at the time they were built, it had actually been 60 years since one of the big floods. So that wasn't really a major concern at the time.
And I came on council in 93. So I just missed all the preliminaries.
I do think that there's 2 elements for me that warrant this discussion, and I thank you for sitting down with whoever you did. First is that they did exist. This isn't a new concept, a new idea. They existed for a long time. Number 2, we are supposedly at some point getting substantial reimbursement FEMA money. If either of those elements didn't exist, then I think you could almost say it's a silly conversation to pursue. But the fact that they do, I think, and 2, I would add that I wouldn't throw out the notion or the idea. There are people in this community that I think would be willing to step up, and whether it's a partnership in some form, to work with the city, to provide funding, what have you, to have a nice facility. Just like this facility that we're in now, and what's been done even in the last year or 2 with the parks, and just the way it's been dressed up. That brings people to you who want to live here. To have the types of amenities that attract people, that have the choice to live where they live. And I just see this as another feature. So consider that if we all will, there are people in this community who step up and write checks that will be a part of this. Thank you. That's all.
I'm not sure, Ms. Timms and then Mr.
No,
White.
I'll wait. Go ahead.
Were you, Mr. White and then Ms. Timms? Then
Is there not any land close by here that we can purchase to build more tennis courts on?
We've actually had discussions about this area, and there are a couple of opportunities that I will say that if we're getting to the point of building new courts, we are months off from that because of the thing, we have to finish certain FEMA projects in order. So I would say if we get to a construction phase for tennis courts, we're looking at least next calendar year.
Okay. Secondly, a young man by the name of Chris Hickman, has he been in contact with any of you about doing tennis lessons at Smith Jones?
Not me.
Not us.
Okay, maybe it was Ashley. Then. How you would? And where I was going with this also was that he was trying to do some tennis classes for young kids at Smith Jones on Saturdays. Now, could this monies that the USTA would be providing equipment, could he possibly get some of that equipment if you need to?
We haven't gotten far enough in the discussions with them about that, no specifics.
Very good.
They just kind of let us know what money's out there and what they'd like to talk to us about.
Thank you.
I want to piggyback on Mr. Goldfinch's comments for just a minute. Had we not had the flood and had they not lost all that they ever wanted in the way of clay courts, I'm not going to belabor the points of clay versus concrete. I'm just going to talk about giving them a facility like we do for most of our other sports, where they can have some type of restrooms, bathroom. I mean, we just can't throw up 2 courts hither and yon because you won't have the facilities to support it for any type of tournament play. Well, you can, but you're cutting yourself short. I don't think Conway's ever tried to do that. I think that we have money coming in from FEMA that was designated to replace the loss of these courts, and something needs to happen for these people because they deserve something.
John mentioned it a second ago. I just want to just repeat the funding aspect of this. Although funding has been promised by FEMA, we are not able to tap that money until the marina lift station is done, which is down there at the marina by the playground. It is engineered and we have a construction company in place. We cannot get the parts to start construction on that. I have no idea when that's going to happen, but we cannot spend any of the additional money, which there's something like $3 million or something like that when we're done with this project. John, I don't know what that number is.
Closer to 2.
Closer to 2. That will be the money left over after that project is over, but we don't know when that project's going to be over until the supplies come in. So for us to promise any timeline would be irresponsible at this point.
Why is this targeted behind a lift station that wasn't even planned when the floods came
The
through?
lift station was damaged property from the flood, and we have to repair that damage before we can use that money for other things, such as a tennis center offsite. So we've repaired the playground, we repaired the park, we repaired the marina store. We have to finish repairing that lift station before we can spend the money. It becomes what's called 428 money, which means you can use it for things other than that were damaged during the flood. So we can't get to the 428 money until we've repaired everything that was damaged in Hurricane Florence.
Well, were these not recently damaged?
It's
The tennis courts?
considered 428 because we're moving it.
Yes.
Why are we moving it?
Because if we rebuild it where it is, it'll flood again.
Well, I don't mean why we're not moving the tennis courts. I thought you meant we were moving the money.
No, physically moving it from one site to another site.
Uh,
So what you're saying is, if we weren't moving the tennis courts, we wouldn't have to spend the money in that order.
Correct.
Okay.
Then we'd be
That's-
repairing them instead of
That's the
repair.
narrative, because I mean, there ain't a week that goes by, I know maybe that you don't get, see somebody at food line and one day, that's the narrative that needs to be broadcast.
That I agree.
And
They don't know
I've
that.
simplified it far more than is, it's still accurate, don't get me wrong, but that is a way simplified explanation than what is actually the case. First of all, it's FEMA money. So we haven't gotten any money from Florence, not even the money that we're already owed of like 1.2 million. So we could do the 428 exchange and still wait 3 years to get reimbursed. So there's a lot of ifs with the FEMA money. And in reality, we've got no money in hand from Florence. We've got a promise to pay.
And I'll tell you just a quick run, basically, once we finish that sewer lift station project, it will be up to the city to create a list of projects, how they want to spend that 428 money once we have the final number of what's left. Council will have to approve that. The state will have to approve it. FEMA will have to approve it. after that, at some point, we'll get a notice to proceed on it.
Can I ask one more
Yes,
question?
please.
I'm very confused about something. We've been dealing with tennis for way over a year with lots of people involved and lots of upset people. This is the first time I've heard any kind of explanation about the monies and the lift station and all. And if I haven't heard it, I'm sure that the tennis people haven't heard it. They need to know the same thing we know, so they'll understand.
If you'd like, we can go back and pull the meeting minutes when it was discussed before.
Well, who you gonna tell it to?
Well, we told it to you several times. We can
Yeah,
bring
but I
up the
don't want to
dates.
have to call all of them on this list.
So they should follow our meetings and pay attention. That's what we have public meetings for.
Okay.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you're reporting on
No.
today? All right. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening. How are y'all? Hey there. I wanted to give you a little update on our open carry versus concealed carry. Some of the things that we're seeing happen around the area. The best way to describe it is basically they're the same thing. You got to have the same training for concealed carry to be allowed to open carry. You have to go through the same class, you have to go through the same background, pass the same standards, and then you are allowed basically to make a choice. I'm going to conceal carry and hide it, or I'm going to open carry and have it out. We did not go to the constitutional carry, which is anybody and everybody who wants to carry a gun can carry a gun. To date, I've seen one. And we are talking August 15th, I believe, when it rolled in, so just a little bit over 30 days past. I've only seen one person actually wearing a gun out, and I've heard just a few other people who have seen them. So they have to follow the same rules for open carry as they do for concealed carry, which means they need to know the rules. They have to know that they can't go into a doctor's office, a hospital, a school. They can't come into this meeting. They can't go into a jail or a courthouse. They already know those rules, which is the reason why I think we finally got that amended version pushed through, so they wouldn't carry a gun somewhere they weren't legally entitled to carry it. So they are supposed to know those rules. So this is one of the places. The playground in and of itself doesn't necessarily meet the standard. However, we as a city, we can't just say the city of Conway prohibits guns on any city property at any and all times. There has to be a little bit more to it than that. And for the playground, that is one of the exceptions, because you're getting into that school and the kids and stuff like that. For events, that's probably the one that's getting ready to have the most challenge to it, and probably one that I'll need to talk with y'all about at some point going forward, which is, do we want to enact a resolution or a city ordinance that says that at any city event such as Christmas parade, Round the Fourth, or Riverfest, whatever we're going to call it, a
Baseball
car show.
games.
Yeah, a car show downtown where we're doing it. Fall Fest, fall into our fall festival that's coming up. Any of those events, we can enact an ordinance on the city side that says at any city event like that, a special event, we can say that neither are allowed, open carry or concealed carry. I think we still have some duty to post a little bit of signage ahead of it. Our parks have already started doing that. You can walk around the complex here and see signs that have been put up in certain places. Walking down Main Street, while that may be, Main Street's probably not a good one because that's DOT street. Pick a city street with a sidewalk. We can't say they can't walk down our sidewalk with a concealed or open carry. But at an event where you're bringing in a lot of other folks, there's a balance of how do these things mesh up? And especially things like what we had last Thursday at the courthouse with, it ended up coming off as a press conference, but it was originally posted to us as a protest. So when you have protests that do happen, lots of emotions, lots of feelings, we would be able to say you are not allowed to have a weapon at those events. So it does give us a little bit of latitude going ahead or going forward that we would need to look at. I know there are several cities, Greenville, Columbia, that have already enacted such a stance. I would absolutely not be averse to it. I just don't see us having the Christmas parade and the Shriners shooting off their fake guns and making somebody else thinking we're under attack. So let's make sure that doesn't happen. But that's kind of how they measure against each other. They're basically one and the same. Once you have one, you have a choice. And it looks like what is trending is people who have the concealed carry training are like, I think I'd rather just keep mine under wraps and not let somebody know that I'm carrying instead of me having it out there. The only one that I did see was Tuesday night, 2 weeks ago, when we had the folks on the front sidewalk of City Hall. There was a gentleman who had one on there that was actually leading their charge there. So, you know, under a new rule, that would probably not have been allowed. But at that point in time, it was proper and he was within the law.
Chief, may I ask a question, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you it's with the opportunity we have relative to events, not just sort of everyday meandering, but when there's an event, we might be able to restrict the carrying of an open gun. Would something as simple as a little league baseball game be covered? I'm thinking about the hot-headedness of some parents and.
I do believe that is probably already in there. There's language in there about when you have these gatherings like, you know, playgrounds and things like that. Even though we're not a school campus, you know, schools, playgrounds kind of run together a little bit. You know, I guess it's a safe place. They're supposed to be able to come together and have fun and not have to worry about that. You're exactly right. We've been called out here. I mean, there's no doubt we've been called out here. Lots of domestic related. Usually it's the new stepdad and the old dad and, you know, all that don't get along and the grand, you know, that happens.
That's right.
And that could happen anywhere at any time. That could happen at any event. It could happen at the graduation. You know, the wrong people show up and say the wrong thing. We already have the ability on an event by event basis, according to how I interpret the law there, that we can post the signage ahead of the event. And that would make that event at that time a prohibited event, or we could just go ahead and do like some of the others are saying, and let's go ahead and very narrowly define and say events, protests, parades, festivals, kind of all inclusive, will always have that attached to it. I believe we need to put signage up because we don't want someone to come in, because there is reciprocity with other states. And if somebody from North Carolina comes down and says, well, I'm just exercising my North Carolina rights based on the fact that we accept each other's concealed carry, and they don't know our local ordinance. So having signage posted would just be, and we're talking about message boards on the road coming in, you know, before you get to the downtown area, we could have messages there as well as the signs posted when they come in.
What signs have you seen posted already? You said you'd seen.
We do have some at some of the city properties already at the playgrounds at Park, Sherwood Park, Collins Park, different places they're posted.
Chief, that argument didn't work with me when I was trying to explain to the game warden that I didn't know what the law was. It's their responsibility. First of all,
Agreed.
I support you fully.
Thank you.
In doing I think the latter, where we just make it a law.
Yeah.
You know, if your troops have to go out and post signs every time there's a special event permit, I mean, you need that kind of.
Yeah. You miss one and yeah.
And I'm still scratching my head over the law. I'm all about guns. I have 23 of them. Varying types. I love guns, but I love the CWP concept, but I don't understand. Anyway, yeah.
I think it has been a little bit more of a non-issue than we expected, simply because when they added that component to it, I think people who've been through the training said, I think I'd rather you not know. And that way I can kind of not have to get into something if I don't have to.
Right.
Whereas if you're open carry and you see something happen, you might be a little bit quicker to kind of lock down and say, you know, I'm going to engage, and maybe you don't have to.
You don't have to worry as much about somebody taking your weapon.
Absolutely.
I did walk somewhere, not in Conway though. Well, we'll talk about that later. That's just a single incident. I just think it's going to be important that we are very careful with the language, and that we think of every potential opportunity we have to disallow open carrying. If we miss one, we're going to be, you know, there will be challenges, I'm sure.
Well, I'm like you, I'm fully in support of being armed at the right place and the right time. But there are just some times and places, you know, one of the arguments that we used when we took this to the General Assembly and the South Carolina Police Chiefs Association, of which I'm a member, South Carolina Law Enforcement Officers Association, also a member, we lobbied to please don't pass this. We thought there needed to be a little bit more of an educational process and rollout of it. Thankfully, it went from constitutional carry to the open carry version, which had the requirement to it. We just wanted there to be a little bit of rules in place there instead of just any and everybody. We've had training on it. State law enforcement through the academy has rolled out videos that gives us various scenarios of encountering people. You know, that was the worst thing we were trying to counter ahead of it is all of a sudden the day this goes legal, everybody call and say, oh my gosh, there's a guy on Main Street with a gun. Now, if you're not used to seeing that could freak you out a little bit. I get it. And when they call dispatch hysterical, unfortunately, sometimes our dispatch system might push that as being a little bit more of an emergency than, and they've actually had the training as well to ask the questions of, other than carrying a gun, what else are they doing? And if the answer is, well, they're window shopping, but they've got a gun on, it's like, okay, this is a legal state. We may not even send an officer, or if we do, I'm being told before I get there, this probably is just an open carry person instead of it's a man with a gun, which, you know, kind of ramps everything up when you're showing up.
I had visions, frankly, at first thinking about our turning into the Wild Wild West. And did wrote some letters against it as well. But if we can learn how to live within the confines of that new law, it may work for us.
It's working so far. But I think that we can always address it with a little bit of tweak on our own to fit the city of Conway, what's best for us.
Mr. White, did Ms. Timms?
Thank you, Chief, for bringing this to us. That was a concern of mine, and also I want to know if we, the city, are putting anything on our access channel about the open carry law.
Well, I know we sent things, we did, I don't think we posted anything to Access Channel. Okay, we did not. I know we did push things out to our social media accounts of, hey, this is coming in, and basically just pushing everybody. If you're going to do this, you need to know the law. So you need to, like you said, the game warden don't give you a break. You need to look this things up so that you'll know what the law and the requirement is. So we did have many media events, or excuse me, releases that went out, as well as we engaged in some community events where we had question and answer for people to come in and just say, okay, tell us what this is going to look like. So there was a huge educational part of it up front, but ultimately it's going to, come back to the individual responsibility.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Timms, I'm sorry, Ms. Timms.
This is off point, but since I've got you here.
Yes, ma'am.
I had a call this week from a concerned citizen that had her grandchildren at a couple of our parks. She picks them up every afternoon, kills an hour or two. And apparently people are letting their dogs off their leashes in the parks.
Okay, well, I got to have the call.
Well, I told her
I
that.
don't doubt that it happens because I see it in different places and we address it. when
Do we
see
have
it.
signs posted about the leashes?
Yes. Yes, in all of our parks. Yes.
I
didn't
think
know.
it's actually just a pictogram of a person with a leash and a dog. It just tells you dogs must be on leash.
It also
Well,
says to
obviously
clean
they're
up
not
after them,
ready
but
yet.
people don't do that either.
Do what?
It also says to clean up after them, but people don't listen
Oh,
to
I
that either.
know.
And we've
Trust me.
actually provided stations for that where they can get the bags and the disposal methods, but I have also been asked to collect that for DNA by other HOA groups. I promise you. They want me to find out whose dog it is. so we can serve it.
No.
You didn't have anything better to do.
We didn't do that. I did not pick that up.
Come on now.
I did not pick
Just
that
think
up.
of the time, effort, and money.
I think there's some consensus for an ordinance to be looked at. We'll work on that and get it back to you as soon as we can.
Please.
Obviously, it won't be in place before the fall festival, but we'll be diligent in that as well.
Thank you.
We can go ahead and get the signage up and we can have the enforcement of it this time.
There you go. We can do that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chief.
Sure.
That's very
Thank you.
timely.
Any other?
Chief, if you get with Ashley, I think he has some extra signage.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Will you send in Chief Hendrick?
Yes.
Chief. Welcome.
There you go.
Hope you are.
All right, so last couple of times I've presented, I've talked about some of our call volume and some of our data there. I've kind of dove into some of the call volume a little bit more because I want to kind of explain some of the questions we get about vehicle accidents and medical calls. This is an overview of all of our incidents, and if you notice, it runs through August 20th. I had my council dates wrong, so I went ahead and did it early. So it's a month off, but it kind of paints a picture of what a majority of our calls are. And as you can see, it's the medical responses. The one that kind of stood out to me was the structure fires.
And would you read, I can't see clearly enough to see the numbers. I don't know which sort of pie piece you're talking about.
So this is the medical responses is 43%, and then the vehicle accidents is 13%, which is the majority of our calls. The one that stood out to me the most was the 9% for structure fires. We always talk about that we run less than 1% structure fires a year. So our structure fire call volume was really high this year in the first 6 months, but since I've ran this data, we've ran 0. So I don't know if it was just a bad spell or what, but I did a little bit of digging through the other numbers. In the vehicle accidents, we ran 323, and the medical incidents was 228. Our anticipated call volume, which I know you can't see, but you can see the dip from last year in 2020. That was through COVID. It's going to be back up again to possibly be another record-setting year. We're very busy. We stay busy a lot. This is our structure fires. As you can see, that one on the right is the anticipated numbers. I ran the numbers for the first 8 months of the year and basically just divided it and then multiplied it by 12. And it shows us running over 30 structure fires in the year. But like I said, the past 30 to 45 days, we've had 0. So hopefully that's a false number, which is a good problem to have as compared to these charts. This is the interesting part. This is kind of new to me too. I ran the data I got with Chief Long and got some information about their vehicle accidents. From year to date, from the first of the year to 8/20, the police department ran 887 vehicle accidents. We only responded to 323, which just sounds like a lot, but he said he's averaging almost 100 a month because you have to account for the ones in parking lots, just minor fender benders where they pull off the side of the road. So they're very busy with their vehicle accidents, but we only ran 323. And out of those 323, we went to 165 that once we got on the scene, we determined there were no injuries. So that's more of a dispatcher possibly or a caller issue. You have to take the call, the information that's given to you on the radio and go or on the phone and go from there. So, over half of them we probably shouldn't have responded to. So what we do is if we have that situation where we feel like it was a wrong dispatch, we go through the dispatch center and we review it. So we have made a few changes since then because we're realizing that we're probably running incidents we shouldn't run. So we're trying to trim that back. Our average on scene time is 29 minutes for vehicle accidents, which sounds like a long time, but it's really not. That's actually a lot faster than what we thought. This is a heat map that kind of shows where some of our vehicle accidents are for the first part of the year. As you can see, the hot spots, US 501, that's where a majority of our incidents are. I thought we would run more out towards the east side of town, but actually that was probably the lowest call volume for us for vehicle accidents. This is the medical responses, and this was really eye-opening for me. Horry County Fire Rescue has responded to 2,800 medical incidents in the first almost 9 or 8 full months of the year to our 1,000, which sounds like a lot, but we could be responding to 3,000 or 2,000 more incidents, which is a pretty significant drop off for us. I mean, that's only a quarter of what they're responding to, or about 33%. So our average on scene time for medical calls is 22 minutes, and that includes the time we get on the scene until they're loaded the patient up and clear. So we're getting in and out pretty quick. And this is a heat map for all our medical incidents. And this is a lot of we talked about overdoses at our last meeting. This is still some of that same data. It's kind of come down a little bit. We're keeping a closer eye on the overdoses, but it's still some of those hard hit areas for us. I know this is some smaller numbers, but this shows the difference in Horry County and Conway. And I went through and picked some of the ones that I knew were hot spots for Horry County Fire Rescue as compared to us. We stopped responding to a lot of the healthcare facility calls back in 2009 because they have an RN or a doctor on staff. So there's really no reason for a fire truck to go. So you can, as you can see, I mean, 164 calls in the first 8 months at Conway Manor, that's a lot to our 14. And out of those 14 we checked, and I think 8 of those were just entered into the dispatch center wrong. So we probably should have only gone to 6. So assisted living is a little different. The numbers are down, but assisted living does not have, or generally does not have an RN or a doctor on staff. So we just consider that like a residential home. And the 3 at the bottom are our overdose hot spots. So, you know, we responded to a lot of those as well, but that seems to be the 3 hot spots in Conway. It's Walmart, Walgreens, and the Econo Lodge. Those are the kind of the 3 hot spots for us. Yeah.
So you get your opioids at the drugstore and you take them in the car.
It seems to be the going trend, but I'm not sure what the underlying issue is there.
And it kind of like used to be,
I think we know what that problem.
Just a motor inn.
that's 501 and 16.
Still got some fried chicken.
It's the old motor inn,
Oh, I see.
kind of across from my fire station. So
That's an easy hop, skipping and jump.
outside of that, like I said, we're just staying busy, but I just want to kind of break down those numbers for you to show that, you know, there is a lot more calls that could be responded to. And there's 4 categories. So if you call 911 and you say, hey, I'm having, you know, X emergency, they try to categorize it by A, B, C, or D. You know, A being non-life threatening, kind of coming at a leisure pace, to D is an extreme emergency. We only go to the C and D calls. So there's all these A's and B's we don't go to. So that's helped a lot. They started that back in 2013. And we've seen a significant change in our call volume since then because we don't go to as many incidents. So
Is it slip and fall and A?
yes, ma'am. And you know, if you listen to the radio throughout the day, throughout Horry County, you hear a lot of times where it's questionable why an ambulance is going, but you know, that's a nationwide trend. So luckily we don't go to all of those incidents. There are some municipalities in Horry and Georgetown County that go to all medical incidents. They send a fire truck too. So if we practice that saying, we would be over 4,000 calls already, which is, you know, a significant improvement. So we're doing everything we can to limit those incidents to the priority incidents. Outside of that, Fire Prevention Week is October 3rd through October 9th, which is kind of a big topic for us. Last year with COVID, you know, we didn't get to do a lot, but this year they're doing a public safety day. It's at the old pavilion site at Myrtle Beach. It's going to be all the Horry and Georgetown County fire departments, and they're trying to get law enforcement involved as well. It's going to be a really big event. So if you have families come out for that, it's from 10 to 2.
What date, please?
It's the 9th of October. It's a Saturday. So that's kind of on the heels of Fire Prevention Week. So we used to do like an expo once a year, and we got away from that years ago. It was all Horry and Georgetown County fire departments, but this is the first year we're trying to get back into that. So if anybody has children, that'd be a great event to go to.
And the location is?
The old pavilion site.
You said that. Thank you.
Glad to take any questions. If not, we'll have a good night.
Lee, what kind of delay are y'all seeing or negative impact with the COVID restrictions on your calls? I mean, are y'all getting bogged down because of some of the protocols we all have in place due to?
I think because we've been doing it for so long now, it's become secondhand nature. And just so I can kind of touch on that, if we have a crew of 2 or 3, one person goes in and makes initial contact. That way, if they are a COVID positive patient, we're limiting the number of people that are engaged with that patient. And it's the same with Horry County. If Horry County gets there before us or at the same time they make contact, we stay on the porch. So we're not breaking that threshold of the door unless we absolutely have to. And they're doing really good at the dispatch center to field these calls to see, you know, are they a COVID positive call or not? And they'll always say on the radio, it's a positive health screening. They don't say they have COVID. It's just they have a screening, you know, the 5 major questions through the CDC. So you hear a lot of that: positive health screening, positive health screening, positive health screening. And we're running a lot of calls right now with COVID where they're going for, you know, 1, 2, or 3 patients at the same house, like the whole family sick. So it's kind of scary.
Chief, I mistakenly gave someone else credit for what I'm told was your idea. September 11th, the two ladder trucks like that. That was really cool.
It worked really good.
That was
We
really
had a lot of positive feedback.
Oh, and Leo hit on what your negative Facebook post I saw the other day that counting down 5 years. That's unacceptable behavior, man.
My retirement eligibility date is 1,055 days, but that's not.
If
we're not-
anybody's
Oh,
counting, right?
Less than 3 years. I'm not going anywhere unless y'all force me out to do it.
Hey, heard this complaint about this before. It's more of a communication issue with dispatch and call 911 and the person talking to the dispatcher, wants to ask, 29 questions. I understand there's a lot there I don't understand, obviously, so I want to ask Joe other than say, like, if somebody's hurt or there's a true emergency, tell these people, speaking to or whatever, to communicate, and fire truck is on the way. I'm gonna ask you some questions there that I can relay. But it feels like if you don't know, you don't know what you don't know, right? And it just feels like, okay, after you ask them 3 minutes worth of questions, then you'll come out and truck.
Right.
And ambulance or whatever. Tell me that's on the way.
And we actually went through some training internally, and they actually sat us down, and all the employees got to go through that list of big questions. And there are like bullet points throughout the questioning. And like after number 3, they're supposed to say, ambulance, fire truck, or a police officer is en route. That's supposed to be like at that point, which is after your first 2 or 3 questions, and then you get the other 29. So they're supposed to reiterate that, hey, there's someone that's coming, we're just gathering additional data. But I think that steps, I can't imagine how many calls are taken a day. So I guess they're missing that step. But being on the receiving end of that one time, I witnessed a vehicle accident, went through that as a civilian, and it felt like it was 2 hours and 35 minutes before the ambulance got there. And they literally came from a mile away.
So frustrating. I'm screaming at the lady,
Can you pull that?
It wasn't Christian like, it wasn't Christian like, I'm just like, I barely feel the guy's pulse and, if you want to know,
The temperature is outside.
why-
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just, anyway, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you for a really good report.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. I believe you're done. Thank you so much. Good reports from all the departments. And now we'll entertain council input. Mr. Jordan, let's start with you.
Thank you, Mayor. Alex has already hit on it, but the ladder trucks 911, thought it was a great touch. And like you, I thought Adam was the brainchild, but I'm glad to see Chief had this under control. So, but no, I think it was a great trip. So a lot of positive feedback.
Thank you so much. Mr. Wright?
Thank you, Mayor. 2 things, along 16th Avenue, from Main to 501, that little, if you're walking from 501 to Main, the hedges on that side of the road, if you're walking, you would be beating yourself up trying to stay on the sidewalk. So if we could get that cleared up a little bit, and then the same thing on 5th Avenue between Lewis and Beatty, on the right side, on my side of the street, there's a sidewalk there, but you wouldn't know it because it's overgrown, dirt and all kind of things like that. If we can have that kind of looked into as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
That's everything that's been talked about.
Thank you very much. Ms.
Thank you.
Timms?
I want to add, coming on down 9th Avenue, there's trees that extend over the sidewalk, and you have to stick your nose out in the 9th Avenue, which somebody will clip off for you if you aren't really careful. But on a good news note, before I was leaving to come out here, you all may have heard it too, but I heard that Pfizer had developed a vaccine for 5 to 11-year-olds. And I think that's probably the best thing that could have happened for a long time. It's not available, of course, yet. It's got to go through all their rigmarole, but they said October, November. So that's kudos to them. That's our most vulnerable population.
Thank you, ma'am.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Goldfinch. Mr. Harmon.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things. I met with a federal biologist at a piece of property that I've got, and it's a conservation easement. I went around with her and was extremely impressed with what she talked about in regards to stuff that can grow in wetlands and pollinators, which always makes our community pretty. And actually talked with her a little bit about some of our FEMA lots. And it's my understanding that the plan is with the FEMA lots to eventually let them go back to nature, except for maybe an easement in the front. I talked with her about possibly getting some grant money and that kind of stuff. And she seemed to think that there would be some federal money available for trees, stuff like wildflowers, bushes, that kind of stuff that, because I don't know about anybody else, but I've gotten calls about the lots and that kind of things. And I've talked to Brandon Harrelson, and Brandon's like, we're trying to get us everything cut as much as we can. I know they had some bush hogs out of commission and that kind of thing. But anyway, the thought being is if we could get some federal funding to do some trees on these lots, and if we are going to let them go back to nature, maybe do it in a way that just looks a little better. And that I was just surprised how much of the stuff she was pointing out that was pollinators that helps everything else were in these swampy areas of my property. So it could definitely swamp azalea, stuff like that. Really, I was very, very impressed. But it's just something to think about.
Thank you very much. We've already touched on the things that I wanted to bring up, except for one thing. As far out as just this side of 4 Mile Road, coming into Conway, traveling south on 501, there's some pretty wide medians. And I know we've been pretty harshly restricted by DOT just in terms of what we can do to beautify some of those areas, but they're extremely wide. I hadn't really paid attention to that before. I'd just like for us to look into the possibility of our being able to do some plantings, even though they're, as far as I know, they're in the city limits. If you would, please. And that's all I have. With that said, we are at the point that we are about to go into executive session, the purpose for which are a discussion of negotiations incident to propose purchase of property in the Trinity Church area pursuant to South Carolina Code Section 3470A2, and B, a discussion of employment of employee in fire department, also pursuant to South Carolina Code Section 3470A1. Is there a motion to go into executive session, Mr. Goldfinch?
Mayor, I move that we go into executive session after a 3-minute.
Wonderful. Mr. Hyman?
I'll second Mr. Goldfinch's
We have
motion.
properly seconded motion. All in favor indicate by a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. I would like We've just reconvened from executive session and we're about to take action on one of those issues. I move that we authorize the city administrator to further negotiate item A, the negotiations incident to a proposed purchase of property. Mr. Goldfinch.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Is there? Are there any comments? There being none, all in favor of the show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. And now we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Goldfinch. Mr. Hyman, we have a properly seconded motion to adjourn. All in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for a good night.
Oh, man.
Whoa.